I'm JP Tuesday.
And I'm Kiki Cannon. As lifelong Disney fans, the work of countless talented Disney creatives have shaped our lives.
Now, as the Disney catalog expands, we're taking a journey through film and television to discover if that spark that shaped us as children lives on in adulthood.
Does your favorite Disney media still cast that same spell? Join us as we find out. We are Rewatching the Magic.
Hi, Kiki.
Hi, Tuesday.
And we are not alone this week. We do have a special guest.
Will our mystery guest enter and sign in, please?
Hi, I'm Tasha, and I am thrilled to be here.
Yay. Yeah, well, we'll put this out there. We are talking about The Shape of Water this week. It is an R-rated movie, so we are going to have an R-rated conversation for this film. If you are one of our listeners that like to listen to our podcast with your little ones, you might not want to this week.
Yeah,
So,
this one's not for the kiddies. Sorry, kiddies. We'll see you back next week. Next week will be a kid-friendly episode.
Yeah. I don't know if we've talked about any Guillermo del Toro movies yet. We have mentioned him on the show.
Yeah, we talked about one of his production ones before. So yeah, I think the last time we talked about him was Book of Life.
Yeah.
So, but he didn't direct that one.
Mm.
But Disney does own 2 of his directorial efforts through the Fox buyout, because Fox Searchlight, now just called Searchlight Pictures, since the buyout, does own 2 of his directorial outings. One of them is The Shape of Water, and the other one is his most recent directorial outing, which is Nightmare Alley. But this one is probably his most successful critically, I guess you'd say.
Mm.
Because this was the one that got all the Oscars.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably the most successful critically. I'd say Nightmare Alley is pretty high up there critically, but it didn't get the Oscar, so yeah, I'd say up there.
Well, I mean,
it's the big one.
We're still waiting for that award season to come around, though, aren't we?
No, it was last year, I think. Might have been the year before. I'm pretty sure it was nominated, but I forget what one. It was the Punch-In year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everyone forgot about everything that happened during the year except for that. But
time has no meaning anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
I cannot keep up with it.
It's kind of weird to me because I'm a huge Del Toro fan, totally admit it, complete fangirl, and this is one of the ones in the circles I travel in anyway that gets talked about the least. Like, I'm very surprised by that. Even things like Mimic and Kronos get kind of tossed around more, and I don't know if that's just kind of a prove you're more fangirly or fanboy than thou type thing, see how much I can talk about the obscure thing as opposed to the one that got the most attention. But it just seems odd to me that people don't discuss it as much as they discuss, say, Crimson Peak or the Hellboy stuff.
You know, I'm gonna agree with that because I'm also a huge Del Toro fan, and this is one of the ones it took me a longer time to see. I mean, you know, I watched Mimic in theaters. I mean, and that was before. I mean, that was one of his ones that was so early. It wasn't like, oh, this is a Del Toro film. It was just like, this is the movie that's coming out this week, so I'll go see it. But you know, Crimson Peak I'll watch multiple times a year because it's probably my favorite one he's ever done. you know, Hellboy, I watched constantly. But this one, it took me a while to watch, because it was like, well, it looks very Creature from the Black Lagoon, and I'm into that, but it was not one that immediately was like, oh man, I gotta rush out and see that.
I saw it as soon as I could. I had lived in a town at the time that this was not like a big theater release. I didn't get at the multiplex. I had to go to the little art theater to see it. So it was kind of a bit out of the way. But it even when it got like the Oscar buzz, it wasn't getting as promoted, I thought, as some of the other stuff in the areas. Like usually they would do the re-release of stuff that had been on. Kind of known or was getting Oscar buzz would get re-released to the bigger theaters, and I don't think it did, at least again in my neck of the woods, which at the time was Tennessee. So it's just strange to me that it's just, even though it is his most critically acclaimed and the one that got him the Oscar, it doesn't seem to have gotten as much play.
That is true. I don't think this one ever came to my local theater in my town. As far as playing, I never saw this one in the theater. I definitely saw it after it came out, home media streaming for the first time. So that was absolutely a thing that did hurt it, I think, because Tuesday he lives in the Chicago area, so it's we've talked about this before. Like he just has access to everything, so if he wanted to go see it, it would just be available to him. But it sounds like you and I are more, in the rural thing. But Tuesday, you didn't even see this movie until we were doing it for the podcast, did you?
Yeah, I had heard of the movie, but it just was never. I just never got around to it. I mean, I had nothing against it. It just I never got around to it, and yeah, I finally watched it for this podcast, and we'll go through our thoughts about it in a minute, but yeah.
Just as a thing, what do you think it was that kept you from seeing it specifically?
I think it was of the era that I know that this was not connected to it, but it was that whole Universal Dark Universe thing of we're going to remake all of the classic monster movies, and we're really, really, really going to try to be Marvel, and make the Universal monster movies our Marvel universe, because they had that Mummy remake, and there was that Dracula remake, and I know it's not part of that universe, but that I Frankenstein, it was one of those, I'm kind of stepping away from remakes of the classic monster movies.
Oh, God bless the Dark Universe.
It was a little too Creature from the Black Lagoon for you.
Yeah.
And I was, I don't know if that's what turned people off a little too much, because it kind of was a little bit for me as well. And the thing is that I don't think it's an unfair cop, because Guillermo del Toro did say specifically that that was one of the major inspirations for the film.
I mean, if he didn't, he'd be lying, like, big time.
Well, it's always obvious. Been his favorite, like, not his favorite creature feature, because that's probably Frankenstein, and he's said that a lot if you consider that, creature feature. But as far as, the like head to toe guy in a suit kind of creature feature, Creature from the Black Lagoon is always the thing he cites as his favorite kind of monster makeup, dude in a suit. And so he wanted to do a movie that was that, but his version of it and kind of a modern take on it. So he's never been coy about the fact that this was sort of a stealth retelling of that idea.
It's his Creature from the Black Lagoon fanfic.
Yeah,
because he had
it
even
really
said,
is.
he wanted to do a version of the story that focused primarily on the love story between the creature and the human woman, which he does in this movie primarily here.
Yeah.
And apparently at one point he was approached by Universal to do the Creature from the Black Lagoon as a remake. I can see them seeing something in the vein of this movie and saying, this isn't really what we're looking for.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
they wanted Marvel from it, and this is not Marvel at all.
Yeah. They wanted they wanted that to be their action franchise, and there's no action in this movie.
Well, his pitch was Creature from the Black Lagoon, but I don't want to say but it's a rom-com, but it is a successful romance, was what his pitch was. It's Creature from the Black Lagoon, but they live happily ever after. And the studio was like, no. And he was like, well, I'll make my own Creature from the Black Lagoon with blackjack and hookers, and I'll win an Oscar for it. And that's kind of what he did. Which, props to you, Guillermo. Please continue doing that, you amazing shining diamond, you.
And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets at least another Oscar nomination from that upcoming Pinocchio animated movie he's coming out with.
I would hope so. I've never seen him do something that seems geared more towards children, but I wouldn't see why he couldn't. He did
technically. He did do that remake of The Witches for HBO Max, but that movie can no longer be viewed.
Did he direct it or did he produce it? Because he has produced things.
That was producing,
but he was involved with it.
All right.
Yeah.
He did produce Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and that is chef's kiss, perfect baby's first horror starter.
He did direct that Troll Hunters Tales of Arcadia thing
for Netflix,
right.
yeah.
Which I haven't watched.
It's pretty awesome.
Not a lot of his directing has really gone for children, I guess. It's going to be interesting to see. I kind of wonder if his, I'm directing for children is going to be a little bit like, hi, I'm Neil Gaiman and I'm writing for children. Please get them into therapy now. Which is like, it's like, yeah, children will read this, but you're going to end up with very peculiar children. And it's not that I'm discouraging that by any means.
Both him and Gaiman seem to get kids like being scared. They really do. When they know it's something like a book or a movie or something like that, they're more resilient than you would think. They'll bounce right back from that and they'll ask you for more. So Source, I was the weird kid who was like, yes, take me to this. I want to see this scary movie or scary thing. And I love it. I'm terrified the entire time. My parents will think I'm going to have a stroke, but seriously, I loved every second of this. I want to see it again.
Oh, same. And I was also that type of kid. And Source, both Neil and Guillermo were that type of kid. You know, I mean, you grow up as that type of kid and you end up with that type of adult. Absolutely. Yes. But the thing is I'm thinking that's probably what we're going to end up with. You know, it's probably not going to be like, you know, and now here's just a, you know, sweetness and light. It's going to be like, no, kids, the world is a deeply screwed up place. Here's how you survive it. You know?
We're not getting Disney's Pinocchio from Del Toro.
Yeah, this is not Walt's Pinocchio. This is going to be like a, you know, a weirdo adult who also is trying to find whatever scrap of joy they can in the world, which I think is how most of us who grow up as that kind of kid end up. Like, I have seen the darkness. Now let me try to, you know, find the one candle left. Which I think is also kind of what we get in this movie. Because that's kind of the point in this movie. He calls it in all of the interviews about it. This is his fairy tale for adults. This was his attempt to write a fairy tale for adults. It's a very adult story. I mean, the very first scene is a woman getting into a bathtub and masturbating. It tells you right away this is not for kids.
Yeah, this feels like Del Toro's Beauty and the Beast more than Del Toro's Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Well, it's both. I mean, it's a blending of those two stories, and he also calls it that in interviews. It's also his attempt at Beauty and the Beast. But it's his Beauty and the Beast where neither Beauty nor the Beast has to change. The idea is society is what's messed up.
And there are a lot of instances of that in the movie.
Yes, very much so. The Michael Shannon character is the worst of America stuffed into one person I've seen in a movie. And you mentioned the Dark Universe being a turnoff for it. I'm not sure if that was, because I honestly don't think enough people cared about the Dark Universe for it to be a turnoff, but I did have some friends is a strong word, but people I knew got genuinely upset about his character and how he was portrayed, and like how they called it essentially a socialism, the movie, and how it basically degraded everything about America. And it was pretty hilarious. But I kind of wonder if that's why almost it doesn't get as much notice as some of the other movies, because I think it's his most overtly political movie as well. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's socialism, the movie. But it's.
He is
making a political statement.
Yeah, he's the antithesis to every one of the main characters. He's ableist, he's racist, he's misogynistic, and totally doesn't like the creature because he's different. He says, God made man looking like me and not looking like that creature.
Or the black woman sitting in front of me that I'm talking to right now.
Yeah. Hence the racism.
He goes that far. God looks like me, the white man, not like you, the black woman. It's not subtle.
No, not at all.
And maybe that did turn off people. Like that there is no subtlety in this movie.
No. It's I wonder, again, I'm still trying to circle back to why is it the least talked about of his movies, that at least in my circles, and I wonder if that is part of it too. Because even Crimson Peak is not subtle about being a gothic romance. And
well, I mean,
more subtle than this.
None of his bigger films, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched, say, Mimic, so I can't necessarily go back and be like, okay, what are the political themes of Mimic directly off the top of my head, because I probably haven't seen it since 2000 maybe, but like Hellboy's a kind of political movie. I mean, Pan's Labyrinth is, set in like, the Franco regime that is like, I mean, that's like right in the middle of the Spanish Civil War, it's even like Crimson Peak is like, hey, let me do a movie about feminism disguised as a gothic horror. Everything. So it's not like, oh yeah, this is the first time he's done a political film. So if you're coming into Del Toro's works and is like, oh no, this is the moment he got political, then welcome to the party. You haven't been paying attention.
I think it's the era. It's specifically the 50s, and this was MAGA time. And 50s is the time they all want to go back to, and people like this guy I know is, how dare you point out that the time I think is magical, happy, sparkly times. I'm sorry, the 60s, not the 50s. The early 60s. As magical, happy, sparkle time, where everybody had, that nice teal Cadillac. If you point out, no, everybody didn't, and it was pretty awful for a lot of people, then they get pissed. So you can't really put that disconnect like, oh, this is in another country, so it's not the same thing, like you could with, say, Pan's Labyrinth, or this was in the Victorian era. Of course, everything was awful then, like it was during Crimson Peak.
Yeah.
So or this is a complete fantasy world, like in Hellboy. So, I don't know. I don't really understand why it's the least talked about among them. I'm just mostly spitballing about that.
Could it be the least talked about because it's the... I mean, let's just put it out there. Could it be the least talked about because it's the movie where the woman has sex with the fish guy?
I'm not saying that's not a factor. I'm saying when it comes to that, even, the monster fucking friends and I have let me down there, because they'll be all thirsting over Hellboy and thirsting over the werewolves and stuff. And I've even seen a few kaiju fuckers in there. God bless their ambitious little hearts. But this one gets slipped up by the monster fuckers.
Do you think it would be talked about more if the fish man was like 8 foot tall?
I was thinking if the fish man was more conventionally attractive, because, well,
I will fight you on the fact that the fish man is not conventionally attractive.
Okay.
I mean, going to this is a muscular, well-bodied fish man played by Doug Jones. Come on, what more do you want?
I mean, as we are recording this, there's a bunch of people on the internet upset that the new Gomez Addams is not conventionally attractive.
My only problem with the new Gomez Addams is I want the hairstyle to just be slightly different. Just push that hairstyle back about an inch from his eyes so you can see his eyes a little bit more. because Gomez Adams usually has very expressive eyes. I think the hairstyle crowds his eyes a little bit more. Other than that, Luis Guzman, perfect casting.
Yeah,
no notes other than that. One
maybe
note.
straighten the hair a little, but that's it. And I want to get this unrecorded, like for all to hear, for all and sundry, reserved for the aliens who come down and discover the dust that was once the Earth. That fish man is totally fuckable. Okay, that is the most fuckable fish man there is.
Whoever sculpted that ass deserved a special Lifetime Achievement Oscar. Yes. I don't know who was in charge of that part of the suit, but please give them a special Lifetime Achievement Oscar. That was brilliant work.
I hope that his day goes like a Disney princess, or her day goes like a Disney princess. Wherever she goes, like little birds fly out and put extra change in the parking meter just for them.
I know that there were both men and women who worked on the sculpt of that suit. I do not know who was in charge of that particular part of that suit, but bravo to you, sir or madam, for that particular part of that suit, because it was glorious.
All right. So,
yeah. The only other, why people may not be into this movie or talk about this movie as much as others, because the main actor in this movie, our main character, Sally Hawkins, our main actor, Sally Hawkins here. There are a lot of people who kind of only know her as the mom from Paddington. So to see the mom from Paddington bang a fish guy.
See, okay. I have never seen the Paddington movies, so I didn't even know she was connected to that. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I had no idea. I wouldn't be sorry if that's faster. I don't know. There's part of me who thinks that if we really think about it, it's probably because it won the Oscar and people are like, okay, it already has. It's great. It's not like getting slept on, but it kind of is. So, cruel twist of fate, I guess.
Yeah, I am just gonna say that, like, I know her from this, and like the Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
She's in the Godzilla movie. Like, I don't watch Paddington. I'm sorry. I watch kaiju films. That's where I'm at in my viewing. So, that's, talking teddy bear movie, not really my thing. Kaiju destroying a city, I'm there.
Speaking of remakes, she's supposed to be in the upcoming Willy Wonka remake for Netflix.
I may watch that.
I can see that, actually. She kind of has, I would assume it's Charlie's mom. She has that vibe.
Could it be? But speaking of the main character, could it be that a lot of people don't want to go watch a movie where it's like, hey, your main character does not speak?
Possibly. Either one. If you want to go, because the fish man doesn't speak, obviously, and we have our main character, Eliza, who is mute.
And communicates
through sign
primarily through sign language. And bravo on the use of it's not it is mostly ASL there through this. It's not what she uses tends to be smaller single word things. There are points in the movie where she gets longer, fuller sentences with more complete grammar. And those are quite beautiful. although most of the movie tends to be her communicating in, just 2 or 3 words at a time at most.
And spelling a few of them out.
Yeah, it's some finger spelling in places where it seemed kind of odd to me that they would be using finger spelling in that situation rather than a single sign. I don't know what the particular reasoning behind that was.
If any of you know Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, if anybody knows Guillermo del Toro, I have much more interesting questions than that. But, yeah, but I thought that was fast. That particular thing was kind of fascinating because I'm always interested in the use of and the choice of language in that way. But let's talk more about the story, I guess, specifically, and the plot and what we liked or didn't, or
Yeah. Honestly, one thing I did like is that every one of our main characters, there's a term that's kind of been going around Disney, especially Disney park fans over the last couple of weeks, called the unfavorable mix. And that's kind of how I describe a lot of the main characters, because you have Elisa, who is mute and a woman in the 60s, and you've got Zelda, who is a black woman in the 1960s. You have Giles, who is a closeted gay man. And of course, there is the fish man, who is seen as a freak of nature because he's not human. All of them seen as unfavorable to the higher class, if you want to call that, especially Strickland, our main villain here.
The academic term for this is the other.
Yeah.
Marginalized people.
Yeah, you could use the term marginalized, but when we speak of it in kind of academic media criticism, we talk about the other. I would also add the character of Hofstadter / Dimitri to this, because you can tell that he is out of place in either America or the Soviet Union, because when he's speaking to his handlers, you can tell that his desires are not theirs, because he really does care about science and learning, whereas Nigel Bennett's gorgeous character, Mikhail Kolovic, I think his name is, but he says, we don't need, the Soviet Union doesn't need to learn, they just need America not to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not interested in the amphibian man for any sort of education. They just, the Americans want him, so the Americans can't have him. And honestly, the Americans feel the same way.
Yeah, they know that the Russians want him, so we can't let them have him.
Yeah. And he is the only one, he's the scientist that cares about actual knowledge and preservation of knowledge and preservation of life in this situation. And so he is an outcast on both sides.
Especially when both sides are saying we need to kill the creature so the other side doesn't get him, and he's like, no, we cannot do that. This is a living creature. We need to learn more about him and his species, and it's a scientific marvel. And everyone is saying, we don't care about that.
I have to admit, sorry, I was actually surprised on the rewatching that they gave a reason for wanting to study him at all. Like they said, oh, this will be very useful in the space race for going up in space and discovering how to do things like, say, breathe liquid oxygen in a human. And I actually applaud if Del Toro put that detail, because it does seem like the kind of thing that they would use it for, and then the military would just decide, and throw it aside.
Yeah, and it is fascinating that we were studying creatures for that sort of thing. We were studying a lot of aquatic creatures for that sort of reason during the 50s and 60s. Of if we ever went to space, well, the only thing we have like that on Earth is ocean travel. It's a place where we can't get oxygen. Well, how do sea creatures deal with it? Let's try to figure that. How do we deal with underwater environments and scuba tanks? And it's a place where gravity doesn't quite work in the same way. So it really is kind of fascinating that he used that as a reason for them to be studying the creature there. Because it does work, and we did that sort of thing. So I will point out, since I just name dropped Nigel Bennett, one of the weird things to me about Guillermo del Toro is there are times I wonder if he was doing the same things that I was to some extent in the 90s. And one of the things I wondered watching this movie was he watching the same vampire shows I was in the 90s? Because this movie has one of the weirdest reunions of actors from a TV show ever, because it contains both Nigel Bennett and John Kapelos, who were both in the TV show Forever Night. And it's like the first project they've worked on, I think, since that show. And I'm just like, why are they both in this movie? And what? But I'm like, that is exactly the type of weird little off-kilter nonsense vampire show that Guillermo del Toro was probably into in the early to mid 90s, and probably would have been very into as well, because there's a lot of things that I keep hearing him talk about that I was like, yeah, dude, I was into that too. So I like him because he seems to have the same sort of fanboy brain I do. And I'm just like, yeah, if I could make a weirdo movie, I would probably just put obscure actors from like random nonsense that only I remember as well. Also, David Hewlett from Stargate is in this as well. So, yeah, I mean, why not put Rodney McKay in your weird little fish fucking movie? Yeah, that's Guillermo. I support you. Please keep doing bizarre things. But yeah. I mean, he also just randomly puts Vern Gorman in his films. I don't know why he keeps doing that, but please keep doing that. Vern Gorman's not in this film. I just support it. Keep casting Vern Gorman in things. But as far as the kind of why they're doing this, I really want to know, and we never know why they sent Michael Shannon down to the Amazon to capture the Fishman. but I kind of want to know that backstory. Like, how did they hear about the fish man? They do say something about the natives in the Amazon trying to disrupt oil drills. So it sounds like he might have been like part of a military mission that was there to protect some sort of oil rig. And maybe the fishman tried to go out there to defend the tribespeople or something.
I mean, they also mentioned that the tribespeople see the fishman as a god. So
yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that like the U.S. went down there to drill for oil, and
it was probably some sort of sacred area that the tribespeople were trying to protect.
Yeah, and probably just in the combat or whatever, they were like, "Oh, holy fish god, please help us! They're murdering us." And fish god was like, "Yeah, what's up? I'll go protect you." And it did not go the way fish god thought. And oops, now I've been captured. I mean, it's kind of the best story that you can get out of the little bits and pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I got a slight vibe that general that came in, I forget his name, but that he and I'm blanking all the names right now. But him and main bad guy had known each other for a while, and that main bad guy was kind of his dude. Whenever there was a big mission or some sort of thing that needed to be done and done now and done right, that's what he sent in that guy for, and that he might have been sent specifically to catch the fishman after maybe incidents with the rig.
You think maybe like Fishman was holding his own until Michael Shannon got there?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, the implication is these two served together previously in some sort of military operation. So you might be right.
Yeah, I mean, the general does very specifically mention by name at least one other, major conflict that they've been in together, that had, something, to do with it, which I'm blanking on right now.
Doesn't really
shouldn't
matter.
be. But the thing is as far as the capture, of the asset, as they're calling him, when they bring him back, though, it does seem like maybe they went a few rounds in the Amazon, and that maybe they lost some men in that, because Michael Shannon is like really mad.
Yeah.
Like, he has a little, I mean, he already is kind of the paragon of toxic masculinity for this movie, but he seems to have a particular beef with the Fishman.
Yeah, what we get is that, we traveled all these hours together on the way here, and we grew not to like each other.
I'm not even sure it's that. Like, he seems to really want to show this guy who's boss in a way that goes a little over and above.
I mean, like we mentioned, he sees himself as God's perfect man. So to see this, what he would consider a freak of nature, he would want to just put it in its place, or what he believes this creature's place is.
Yeah,
I get a grudge out of it. Like, he hates this thing, not just as a concept, not just as an antithesis of you're everything I stand for, but you have done something to me or mine in a way that makes me hate you.
I mean, he does take 2 of his fingers.
Yeah, but it's
for that.
Yeah, but he was already torturing him with a cattle prod and stuff before that. And we know that he was, because we see the scene in the bathroom where he's talking to the 2 women, and Eliza finds the blood that's been left on the cattle prod and stuff, and that's before he takes the fingers. So we already know that there's been like significant torture and stuff, and so it's not in retaliation. The fingers were in retaliation. The torture was, before that. So I do kind of wonder if, what the catalyst was for that. He does seem to have, the Strickland, Michael Shannon's character, does seem to have a great disdain for anything different than him. Yes, but there does seem to be something extra that happened, maybe. And like I said, I don't know if it was, maybe Fishman took out like a bunch of his troops, or, did a lot of damage to something. We don't know. We don't get that part of the backstory. But it is fascinating. He also seems like the kind of guy that would just kick a puppy for fun, though.
Yeah.
So you don't know. I mean, was there an inciting incident, or is this just a guy that would kick a puppy because it's there?
My thing is that he's just an asshole.
He is just an asshole, but if you look at him while he's at home, he genuinely has affection for his wife and his kids. Like, he's not...
But does he, though? Look at that 1,000-yard stare when he's at home, and the way she talks to him. That's not affection. Like, that weird. And I love the way that it's filmed, and bravo to, like, the direction and the acting in that one sex scene we get with him and his wife, because that is the most uncomfortably weird sex scene in a movie that has a woman fucking a fish man.
The most unloving sex scene.
It is the most off-putting instance of supposedly loving marital relations I think I've ever seen rendered on film.
And the fact he's constantly telling her to be quiet, because at this point in the movie, he's kind of had this thing for Eliza because she doesn't talk. But then again, he seems to be the kind of man that, it's a woman that doesn't talk. Perfect.
Oh, yeah.
But look at the way his wife treats him, though. And it's like he's sitting there at the table and his kids come in and his kids are doing the thing that all kids do, like, Dad, guess what? Guess what? Guess what? Guess what? Guess what? And he is such a weirdly broken man. He doesn't yell at his kids. It's not like that, what? You're annoying me. He just eventually is like, what? Do you think we'll have rocket ships? Yes, this is America. We'll have whatever we damn well want.
And the
like, he's
time,
just he doesn't look at the kids. Yeah. He doesn't make eye contact. He's just staring straight forward. And like, yeah, you can be like, well, he just had his fingers bitten off by a fish man or what. But the kids are not like, is Daddy okay today? They're just like, yep, that's normal Daddy. You know?
He would rather be anywhere else than there.
Yeah. And he's so different than the way he is at work. Like, at work, he's more animated. He's more, like, the second he gets home, it's just like, here's my robot mode. And then the wife comes in, and what does she say? Wash your hands really well. And then come to the bedroom. And then what does she do the second he gets in the bedroom? She sniffs his hand to make sure he's cleaned it well enough to touch her.
Well,
which
yeah, because he doesn't
which
want
is a
to
nice
watch
which is a nice callback to earlier in the movie when we first meet him, as he refuses to wash his hands after he's gone to the bathroom.
Because it's a weakness of character. How weird is it that he's gone out of his way to think about how he washes his hands after he pisses in a manner of character rather than basic hygiene?
You know what he's saying, though, right? You know what he means by weakness of character, yes? Have
Go
you
on.
ever talked to that kind of man before, Tasha?
God, no, thank God.
Okay, I can tell you exactly what he's saying. He's saying, and I'm just going to say it the way those men have said it to me before, because I've had that same conversation with that same type of man. If a man washes his hands too many times in the bathroom, he's queer. That's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. I have had that exact same conversation with that exact same type of man.
Also, I mean, it's kind of come around in the last couple of years, especially with as a kind of a rebellion to COVID. No, we're not going to wash our hands, and men openly stating that they don't use soap when they bathe.
Yeah, it's
don't wash
so
their
weird.
asses or wetting
Yeah.
their asses.
Yeah. If you touch your own rear end, you're gay. Yeah, it's so weird. But that is exactly the mindset that he's talking about. And when he says weakness of character, that's what he means. And when she says that he puts his hands on his hips when he pees, that's also why he does that. Because if he touches himself, that's what that means.
See, there is one thing, though, that I think kind of contradicts that, but at the same time reinforces it, and it actually makes it more disturbing for me, because he kisses his son and lets his son kiss him. And that, to me, just strikes me as a detail that
But think about
personally
how old
reflects on.
his son is. I guarantee you in another 2 years, he'll start popping his son for that. I mean, I'm not kidding. It will be like, you're too old for that now. Man up. Stop it. You've grown out of that.
I get the vibe from him that he specifically lets his son kiss him and will kiss his son back specifically to have a, no, I don't think about this too much. What do you mean I'm thinking of putting too much thought into this? I can't possibly be queer as something like that. That's the vibe I got from that he specifically allows this much affection, not because he wants it, not because he feels any sort of love for his son, but this is his backup plan.
Maybe, but yeah, but there's so many of those in a movie that does touch on homophobia and all that with the Giles character and everything. I those little touches of that with the Strickland character really resonate, of that this is how he's been. And he was in the military and all that kind of stuff. So that's where he's been picking it up of that. And that's that weird sex scene between him and the way his wife talks to him of yes, you deserve a car, you deserve a Cadillac. Touch me here, do that. But the second that they get into bed, he's covering her mouth, and it's like, oh, it's so bizarre, and it's so uncomfortable, and the way that it carries over to his dealings with Eliza, and that's what he's thinking about, and it is such a bizarrely filmed scene, but it's so perfect in the way it sets up the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's it's so great of like how unhappy this man is. And in a way you feel sorry for him, because even though he's the villain, you know he wasn't born that way. He is an entire product of that society.
It's like he's in a situation he can't control at home, so he tries to control the situation at his job.
But it's not that. He could probably be in a better situation at home if he'd, I don't know, talk to his wife.
It's also the situation of the living situation. They're living in Baltimore, and the family seems to really like living in Baltimore. He hates it. He doesn't want to live in Baltimore. He doesn't want to live anywhere near there. He wants to be anywhere else but Baltimore, even though the entire family seems to love living there. And it's another situation of a thing he's only living there because of his job.
I honestly, the vibe I get from him more than anything else is he's become exactly what this society wants him to be. He's become the 100% perfect, this is what I should be, and I hate it. Why am I not happy? And I'm going to take it out on the things that aren't living like the way the society says they should, because they seem a heck of a lot happier than I do.
And that's the thing, I think, that is the point, is that he has done all of the things that he has been told should make him happy, and denied whatever it is that might have been inside of him. We have no idea who this guy should have been. Maybe. Like, we don't know when he was a little kid, what did he want to do? What did he want to be? You know? Like, what were you as a little kid? But it's obvious that whatever that was not the dude who tortures fishermen for the government. You know? And lives in Baltimore.
I think the closest we get is when he's pleading with the general and he says a man does everything he can to be useful. He wanted to be somebody who made things better in some way, who was useful in a way beyond I'm just going to torture fishmen or something like that. And he's not. And on top of that, he's failed.
Well, there comes a point in the movie, and this, I think, is the point that is missed by maybe a lot of people watching it, and definitely the sort of people that should have it, pounded into their skulls. But I think the really obvious point is there comes the point in the movie where everyone sees what is happening to the fishman. He is being tortured. He is going to be killed. And we have all these people. We have Eliza. We have Zelda. We have Hofstetler. We have Giles, who's not even there, but who sees Eliza's pain and decides to help, And they all decide, like, we're not just going to stand by and let this happen. Okay? And they organize this escape. But then, in the aftermath, Strickland has his choice. He is told by the general, like, you get out there and you find the fishman, or we're gonna make you disappear. Basically, you're gonna be nothing. Your entire career, you have 36 hours, I think he gives him, to find the fish man, make it right, or there will be a hole in the universe in the shape of you. And all of that you did, all of that sacrifice, all of that denial of yourself, all of this stuff that you did will have been for nothing. It will be as if you never existed.
And this is right after, as Tess said, he makes one mistake. Isn't he allowed to make one mistake? And the general's pretty much telling him, no, you don't get to make any mistakes. And because you made a mistake, we are going to make it that you don't. It was like you said, it would be like you never existed.
And the thing is, at that point, Strickland has a choice, and it is echoed in what Eliza says. If, Giles says that the fishman isn't human, and Eliza says, if we do nothing to help him, neither are we. And Strickland has that choice. He has seen that this system he has given his life to does not care about him. It is not a reciprocal system. It is an evil, soulless system that will take from him and never give back.
The ultimate abusive relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It is the ultimate in dehumanization. It will take everything you are, and then it will erase you the second you step out of line. And he looks directly into the face of that, and he has a choice. All he has to do is just let the fishman go. At that point, he has no idea who took the fishman. He just has to not pursue it. He can just go home to his family and leave Baltimore. Be anyone else.
Was it a death threat, though?
It might have been. But you know what? It's the freaking 60s. It's a lot easier to disappear in the 60s.
No cell phones.
It's not like they have a GPS tracker on him.
See,
it's the 60s. I'm not saying it wouldn't be difficult. It's possible. Skip over the border to Canada and disappear, okay? But the point is, all he has to do is just say no, or spend the next 36 hours desperately attempting to find the fishman, and oopsie doopsie, I couldn't find the fishman, But the point is that he has a choice. He has a choice. And he chooses to go out there and hunt down the fishman, and that's what leads to his bad end. Is there was theoretically a way that he could have salvaged something, that he could have possibly continued.
It could be a situation where he thought he was in too deep, that there was no out, that the only way out was to, for lack of a better term, finish the mission.
But you know what? It's still his choice.
Yeah.
I did not actually get the vibe that it was a death threat. I just got it. This is your career is over. You're getting transferred to Siberia now. Which, for a guy like that, that's honestly worse. To be known as a failure on that level. To fall that hard. And yeah, it's like Eliza said, are we even human? And at that point, Strickland isn't human anymore. I don't think that Strickland would kiss his son or similar.
Yeah.
I mean, he tries to cover it up. Strickland tries to cover it up, like, hey, well, we won't tell anybody. No one will know. We'll do a covert search, and but David Hellett's character Fleming's like, well, I just called the boss as soon as it happened because we need to do that, and now he's into it. Now he's in it.
And that's fucking what's his face? Not Stitzel. I will never remember his name. Michael Shannon's character's fault too, because he was the one who was like, "Oh yes, protocol for this, protocol for that," and it's been shown that it bites you in the ass. I mean, Dimitri got to mouth off to you for it.
Yeah, it's his. Yeah, because throughout the whole movie, he said, protocol, 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 and protocol finally bit him in the ass at the end.
Something that I wonder about at the end, where the fishman goes to escape and he's about to escape, and then Fleming he gets shot by Michael Shannon's dudes. I won't call him Stitzel, but that's not his name. He finally gets right in his face after having survived being shot. And Michael Shannon's character says, "You are a god," in that voice of total awe. What do you think would have happened to him if he had lived after that? Because I think that realization was his world breaking apart in a way that I don't know he would have recovered from.
He might have ended his own life at that point. Like, everything he knows is a lie at that point, and there's no going back. It's whether in belief or in professionalism, because he couldn't get the fishman back. His career's over. His worldview has been shattered. I don't think he'd be able to live with himself and probably take his own life. He had the gun in his hand. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, had he lived, he probably would have gone crazy. It would have probably been the guy gibbering about, the
Fishman.
The fish gods are coming to end the world or something.
Mm-hmm.
That to me though is the moment of recognition. There is a moment that they cut from the movie that I've heard them talk about, that when they, I wish I'd seen the footage. It might be out there like in a deleted scene and I just haven't seen it. But there is the point in the film that the reason they have to release him so early, Eliza's been keeping the fishman in her apartment, but he's getting sicker because he's been staying in the tiny little bathtub. And what happens when you keep a fish in a too small tank, but he's getting sicker and sicker, and so they're going to release him early, and then they get him out into the rain, and there is a moment that it was meant to be shown, but is now just off screen, where once they get him out into the rain, he begins to heal because he's now in a larger environment and more water. That apparently was just really beautifully acted by Doug Jones in going from the sickly state to finally being that like beautiful godlike physically imposing stance that he has out there in the rain toward the end. And I really wish they had kept that, because I think it would have given a little more power to that moment at the end of Michael Shannon realizing that moment of, you are a god. I think the other kind of you are a god moment that really gets me is Giles when he has the healing moment and he wakes up with the head full of hair and his wounds are healed, and he comes gibbering to Eliza and he's like, well, they they say that they were worshiping him as a god in the Amazon, and is he a god? I don't know. He ate a cat. Like, I love how those things are connected in his brain. Like, what do gods do? They eat cats. Of course, that's what gods do. Like,
Oh, that part.
I do want to pour that one out for the little kitty, though. Like, that poor cat didn't deserve it.
I covered my kitty's eyes.
Yeah.
Notice. That's the only part of the movie I'm just like, oh no, I can't watch this for like any Del Toro movie. Everything else I'm just like, yes, the guy just got a knife through a cheek. Yes, that guy got stabbed in the face like 5 times. And then there's a cat and I lose my shit. I'm such a
I know, right? Do whatever you want to a human. Leave the animals out of it.
I mean, there's an entire website dedicated to does the dog die in the movie?
That website is amazing. Thank you to the people who run that website.
Yeah.
No, that knife through the cheek, that is my favorite effect in any Del Toro movie. You can feel every single inch of that blade watching that effect, let me tell you.
And a bullet hole in the cheek too.
That one, the bullet hole in the cheek in this film, good effect, but that knife through the cheek, because you do the going in and the coming out, and it's such a good effect. I love the slow build of the romance, because at first it's just like she knows there's something in the tank from when they first bring him in, because she's just cleaning near the tank and there's like a noise and the water's moving and she puts her hand on it, and and then she does the thing where she puts the egg, and he tries to grab at it and everything, and at first it's like it's just how you would gain an animal's trust. But then very quickly it moves beyond that. And it moves up to like, well, are we teaching a chimp sign language here? Like, because she teaches him the sign for egg. But then it becomes like, well, let's talk about music, and let's talk about, it's such a fascinating kind of slow build to the romance, to eventually it's becoming more and more of, she's got him in her apartment and she's bringing him greeting cards and they're having breakfast together, to the moment where you've got that entire gorgeous fantasy sequence in the ballroom.
Yeah, this movie has a musical number.
Yeah.
And I like how it kind of starts, like she's very frustrated. Like she has these feelings for him. She doesn't really know how to express them, and her voice, she's trying to struggle to talk, and it's only coming out as bare whispers. And then she starts mouthing along to the song. It's my only complaint about the movie is it's not actually the actress singing, but it does make sense since the character can't talk.
Yeah, but I like that she's signing it to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then in her head, she's singing it to him. And then she finishes it, signing it to him. So we're just seeing her Hollywood fantasy. But while he's been eating, she's probably just been signing along with the lyrics of the song that we're hearing from underneath, because it's been playing from either Giles's TV next door or from the theater below them. It's kind of unclear where the song is coming from, but it's one of those two places. And she's just signing along with but it's probably too complex for him to understand.
He's not even looking at her for most of the time. He's just
he's not really looking at her, but she's signing along with the song, and then you can tell that in her brain she's imagining what it would be like to sing along with the song and dance with him, in that same vibe. And we've seen her dance throughout the movie in small little steps, little things with Giles or down the hallway or,
that little thing after she sees the tap dance number with Bojangles and Shirley Temple, and she starts tapping as she leaves the apartment. That was a really cute scene.
Yeah. And who hasn't done that, honestly?
Yeah.
Here's a question. When do you think we fully know that the monster or the asset is at least human-like, not, like you said, just an animal, a chimp we've taught sign language, that it's able to reciprocate those feelings with her? What would you say the moment is?
I wouldn't even know. I mean, it happens so gradually that it's hard to tell where there's a single point.
I think for me, it's the moment in the movie theater
where he tries to escape and he just watches the movie.
An animal scared in that same situation would do one of two things. It would find a small space that it could hide in, and it would stay there until it felt safe. Okay? So, it would generally find something just big enough for itself, and it would curl up in there and wait until it felt safe, or it needed food or, to relieve itself or whatever, and it would stay there. Or it would go out and attack the first thing it sees, which would, there's a busy street right outside. It would have started attacking people, and it would have been mayhem. So, had the Fishman just been an animal, it would have done one of those two things. It would have hidden in a small space, or it would have begun a rampage until someone or something took it down. But he didn't. He ran out and ran downstairs and into the movie theater, and then became transfixed by the film and stood there and waited for her to find him. He was in a place where he couldn't hurt anybody else because he just accidentally hurt somebody. He didn't want to do that again. But he was in a place nearby where she could find him, but he was watching the film. And he was in a position where he was kind of exposed.
Yeah, he's just standing in the theater.
Yeah, he's just standing in the theater where theoretically anyone could find him. It's not a very tactically safe maneuver. And just waits for her. And that is a more human reaction, not an animalistic one. And so I think for me, that's definitely the point in the movie where I'm like, that's not an animal response.
Mine came sooner when it was the actual music. Like, it was listening to the music and responding to the music, and in a way that I'm not familiar with animals doing. I mean, maybe chimps and higher primates do that sort of thing, but for the most part, animals don't seem to really care that much. I remember, again, in this Del Toro fan circles I run in, and Twitter and things like that, because it's Twitter and the discourse is dumb. But there was some talk of whether the asset could actually consent to sex with her, and because it doesn't have human intelligence. But I think that the movie did a pretty good job of showing this is consent and this creature does have human intelligence.
Well, do we want to get into my favorite theory? And the answer is yes, we do, because I want to get into it.
Go ahead.
Which is the theory that is my personal theory. Is Eliza even human? Because I do not think this is a movie where a human woman fucks a fish man. I think this is a movie where two fish gods fuck each other.
Because she has the scars on her neck, and we're never told where they come from or how she got them. We're told that she had them since she was a child. She was an orphan.
She was found by a river.
Yeah. She's not found by a river. She's found in a river. They specifically say in the movie that she is found in the water. What Michael Shannon says is, and she was found with those scars on her neck. Who would do that to a child? Humans are awful monsters. Now, Eliza never says that someone did that to her. He says, oh, that's why you can't speak, because of those scars on your neck. Who would do that to a child? That's Michael Shannon giving supposition. But look at where those scars are. And think of where the vocal cords are in a human. If someone were to take a blade and slice on a human neck in that exact position, deep enough to sever the vocal cords, you'd hit the arteries well before you hit the vocal cords. And on an infant, they would bleed out in seconds. So for someone to do that to an infant, dump them in the water and leave so no one could know where they are, then someone find that child, take them to a hospital in the 60s, do surgery enough to save that infant's life. You see where I'm getting at here?
Wasn't it also in a Spanish-speaking country because her last name is Hispanic?
Yeah, I mean, there might have just happened to have been a group of nuns in Baltimore, but they never say what river she's found by. They just say they found her in the water by a river. But yeah, her name is Eliza Esposito. So I'm guessing maybe not from Baltimore, but maybe there's just a group of, nuns in Baltimore that all happen to be Hispanic. And I'm sure there's, Hispanic populations in Baltimore. I'm not saying there's not. But You know what I'm saying?
Also, the very end of the movie, we know that the fish man can heal. He doesn't transform.
Yeah, we only ever see him giving people things they already have. Regrowing hair, healing wounds, healing his own wounds. But think about it. She gets shot. He takes her into the water. And his first thought is not, I need to heal the bullet wound. That he leaves. But what he does do is he reaches for her throat and he opens her gills, which means his thought is, if I open her gills, she will heal her own wound. Because he is able to heal his own wound.
And there's that moment earlier in the movie, right before the two have sex, where he's reaching for her throat in a loving way, but she backs off. It could be that he knows, he has some sort of instinct that maybe she is one of his people or a similar type of people.
Yeah, she might not be the exact same type of fish person he is, but because think of it like when we enter the movie coming into the apartment in water, and we come into her floating in water because she's dreaming. And then she wakes up out of that dream. She's not met the fish man yet. Why is she dreaming of water?
Mm-hmm.
She's not dreaming of her great love, the fish man, who she's already met. This is her normal dream. Why does she start every single day submerging herself in the bath for a really erotic time? They constantly say that the fish man needs like a high protein diet. And what is the one thing we never really see her eating during the movie? Like, do we ever see this woman put a veggie in her mouth?
No, it's eggs.
It's constantly eggs, or like it's some sort of like tuna sandwich or something that she's eating or whatever. They've tried to feed her key lime pie and she is disgusted by it because it's like a fruit.
Is a gross key lime pie.
Well, yeah, it looks like a gross key lime pie, but you get what I'm saying? Like, every time she's seen eating something, it seems to be something very kind of protein heavy.
Mm-hmm.
So she's constantly like, she starts her day off with like 3 boiled eggs. Like, that's not generally a typical human breakfast. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So she does seem to just, yes, she's off kilter, but also she's on the bus and she's running her hand along, and you'd be like, yeah, she's tracing the raindrops as they move along the window, but is she tracing her hand along the raindrops as they move along the window, or is she moving the raindrops along the window? Because they never seem to be moving in like the normal pattern that the wind would suggest. So, there's all these little touches in the film that I don't know if that's their intent, but it really seems like they put an awful lot of bizarre things in the film for it not to be their intent. So, I don't know. They put a lot of stuff in there about Giles being like, well, that's just my version of the story. And Giles is possibly an unreliable narrator, so maybe Giles has put you know, like I'm remembering my friend as if she were also a fish creature or something to make this happier in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
Because the government just straight up murdered my friend or whatever, but which is a possible interpretation.
Possible.
But
And
there's so much in this film that's just like, no, Eliza's also a fish creature.
I 100% believe she is a fish creature. That she's at least has some fish creature blood in
yeah,
her.
maybe she's just half fish creature. Maybe her mom also fucked a fish creature. It runs in the family.
So she's Namor, you're saying?
Maybe.
Can we kind of go a little bit into Giles' part of the story, because it's both sad and in a way it is very sad, because you have Giles. He's in advertising. He works in advertising. He draws up ads for. Well, he draws up ads, and he's very unsuccessful. At least at this stage of his career, because he draws up an ad for Jell-O, and the client says, well, we want it green Jell-O, we don't want red Jell-O. So he's trying his best to appease his client, and they really don't want him on the job.
Well, and now they just take a photograph. Because we don't need you to draw it anymore. We just have really good photographs now, because it's the 60s and we have cameras.
But also, you mentioned the key lime pies. He goes to the one diner every day and buys a pie every day, not because he likes pies, but because he has a crush on the guy running the diner. And he has a crush on the guy running the diner because he has really good customer service.
Well, as long as you're a certain type of customer.
Yeah,
I was getting to that. He says, he's very welcoming to everyone during the first part of the movie. He listens to their problems and, whatever, come back anytime. Oh, did he mean when he said come back anytime? And then it's at the end where we see the black couple come in to say, hey, you're not allowed in here. You can't sit here. Your kind isn't welcome. All while Giles is coming to terms with his feelings for the diner guy. And he says, I really, you seem like you want to know me and I want to know you too. And tries to hold his hand. It's like, whoa. I am not about that life. And you can get out of here too, because this is a family establishment and we don't want your kind here.
But also, do you hear what he tells the black couple right after kicking him out?
Don't come back here anymore.
No, that's not what he says. Y'all come back now. He says the exact same corporate line.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what he's supposed to say as a franchisee.
Yeah. So
and that's what Giles hears. He wasn't saying, y'all come back because he wanted him to come back. He's saying it because that's what you say because it's your job.
And as someone myself who does work in customer service, yeah, even if you don't like your customer or have a very difficult customer, you're still supposed to say, have a good day, even if you don't mean it.
Yeah, well, especially, there are certain restaurant chains, especially, that you have the specific script that you have to say. And if your boss hears you say something different, you get written up for it.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
It wasn't only just that, because before he made the move, and he made the move before the black couple came in, and the guy was like, whoa, back off, and then the black couple came in, and the pie guy jumped in with, no, takeout only for you, and gave the y'all come back and all that. But before that, they were kind of bonding. They were, the guy said he genuinely liked Giles coming around. and he liked talking to him. He said, "You're a good conversationalist, and that's part of what I like about this job, the conversation." And then Giles made a move, and he freaked out. And then the black couple came in, and he proved to be even more of a jerk. Giles said, "You don't have to talk to them like that." And he was like, "You get out too."
Well,
Gave the same line. I think that is a little more devastating because it was almost a connection, at least a friendship connection, before this guy just said, "No, not even close."
well, we talked about this, Tuesday and I have talked about this before when we talked about
Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures, another Octavia Spencer movie. But there's that moment of the sometimes between white people of like, oh, I'm a bigoted piece of trash and you're a white person and I think that you're also going to be a bigoted piece of trash because you are also a white person. And I think that was the moment where he was like, I like you coming in here because I think we're the same. You seem educated and we have good conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where he was going with that, the diner guy. And I think that was the thing that devastated Giles so much because he was an older white man in the 60s, And I think that in that time of upheaval, because this is a very political movie, and Guillermo del Toro has been like, well, I made this because of Trump. Like, let's not beat around the bush. I made this because, Trump had just been elected, and I wanted to be like, hey, can we stop demonizing, marginalized people? And so I think one of the main points of the scene was that the pie guy there is like, I like you coming around because I think we connect on that level. Like you're one of the ones that gets it. And then when Giles made the move, immediately he was like, oh no, you're not one of the bigoted pieces of trash like I am. You need to get out of here.
Yeah.
And then when he went the step further of standing up for the black couple, that really threw the pie guy. He's like, no, you are definitely not my kind of people. Like it's bad enough you made a pass, but now you're going to stand up for the black people.
Mm-hmm. I think that, and I also think it was a character moment for Giles, because if you remember in the beginning when there were the news had the civil rights on it, he was like, no, change this. Put on the Pretty Happy Dancing Shirley Temple thing. Put on anything else. I don't want to see that unpleasantness.
Yeah, he didn't want to see black people struggling for their rights, but he did want to see, Bojangles dancing happily on the staircase.
Yeah, and like the most racist Shirley Temple film ever. That's total rebel right there. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But and then when he sees it in his face, he has the choice. He probably could have, at the very least, played off, oh, I was just joking, or I was just kidding. Yeah, you did a good job kicking them out of there, or even just kept his mouth shut. And he didn't. And he knew it torpedoed his chance, and I think that was the character moment for him when he's like, you know what, this is bullshit. This guy's bullshit. Fuck him.
Yeah, he had a moment where he could have said, oh, you misread me earlier. That was not what I meant at all.
Mm-hmm.
He had a moment where he could have pulled it back. And much like Michael Shannon's character, he had a choice. And he chose to be himself. Granted, it cost him, his local pie place. Mm-hmm. Which, honestly, can we talk about how awful that pie place looked? It's like the Dixie Diner or whatever, but it's a good pie, which is like, I guess that guy's supposed to be Italian. Yeah, I guess he's supposed to be Italian, but they make us talk in a bad Southern accent and say, y'all come back now or whatever, but our slogan is Italian or something. Like, who designed this pie plate? Like,
I was just caught up in how hideous that key lime pie is. Key lime is like my favorite pie, and just sitting there looking at that neon green atrocity.
yeah, it was a key lime pie the color of Ecto Cooler, which should appeal to me, but did not. Like, I love key lime pie. It's one of my favorite things, and I love Ecto Cooler, also one of my favorite things. So you would think that I should be right in that Venn intersection, but no, that looked awful. Also, why does Giles's refrigerator look like something you would find in like the worst Fallout vault? Like, you just open it and there's just like dozens of preserved pie in there, and you're like, I feel like something tragic has happened here.
I mean, he only has the pie because he has a crush on the pie guy.
Yeah, but
You
throw away
out.
the pie. Like, you go there, you flirt with the pie dude, you go like, oh, I'll take this home for later, and then you chuck it in the bin. What is wrong with you, Giles? Why do you have like 24 pieces of pie sitting in your refrigerator? You are never going to eat that.
And they all look the same, so whatever is in this pie, it doesn't decompose.
Yeah, it is not decomposing. It is the perfectly preserved pie from Fallout. That is what this is. I wonder if that was Guillermo's shout out to Fallout, and if it was, bravo, I may have been the only person in the world to have caught that reference.
Nuka pie!
Add that to the list of far more interesting questions I want to ask Guillermo del Toro, if anybody knows him.
Okay, so I want to circle back to something real quick.
Go ahead.
The Jell-O. It kind of ties in with the pie a little bit, but I actually, in my history class in college, I did a whole paper on how Jell-O was viewed at the time because of this movie. We had to basically find a movie that wasn't like a historical a biopic or something like that, and find a historical point in it. The movie had to be historical too, but at least set in a different period. And we had to write a paper on some little part of it and how that ties into history. And the way Jell-O was marketed in the Depression, it was like the luxury food, the luxury that everyone could afford, because it was kind of easy to make. They were just starting to like make it into packages, and at the same time, it had to throw back to when Jell-O was a pain in the ass to make because you had to like boil animal hooves for hours and hours and hours. And in this, after the Depression stopped, there was kind of a stigma about it. Like, it was the poor person's food, because now the poor people could afford it. They ate it during the Depression, and it wasn't considered a luxury anymore. So it was like really marketed as the family food at the time, and especially the green lime Jell-O, because like lime with the whole citrus thing was kind of a novelty, and making it that lime color was considered kind of a novelty too, because back at the time, for the longest time, green food had been toxic, and this was like the first one that hadn't been. So there was like this push of the green lime Jell-O in the ad would have been considered the most wholesome family possible thing of the 60s, which is kind of the impetus of Giles's character, because at the time, as a gay man, he would have been considered the enemy of the family.
The color green plays a large part in this movie, from the Jell-O to the key lime pie to the Cadillac to the fish man himself.
Oh yeah, and
Well, I'm just gonna say, green is kind of the color of the ocean, and a lot of things in the ocean. So it does show up a lot in the film in that sense. But notice that the car is not green, it's teal.
Teal, yeah.
You know, and he gets very mad when you're calling it green.
Yeah, so the car, the salesman, he's like, oh, it's not green, it's teal, like giving him that out. I think it's kind of a green is the color of life in this.
Well, and the Jello people say that green is the color of the future. The car guy disagrees that teal is the color of the future. But then what happens to the teal? The car gets smashed, the guy that owns the car gets dead. But what happens to the green things? They keep going, you know?
Mm-hmm. Except for that damn pie. I mean, I guess it keeps going, but
well, that
not a healthy green.
Perpetual. That pie will outlive everything.
Kind of what I was circling about this is I really got the vibe that the reason Giles didn't get work as much anymore was because he'd been outed. Maybe it's just the madman in me, and I'm circling back to what happened with Sal, but the vibe I got was that other guy who was trying to sort of get him work had outed him or somehow done something to him, so he's not working directly with him anymore, but the guy feels bad about it, so he's kind of trying to get him low-key work, but not trying super hard. That was my reading anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe you're at home and out of the office, and that's why you shouldn't have come to the office, because I'm trying to slip your work under the radar so they don't know it's you, so that maybe I can still get you a paycheck if I, submit your work under a pseudonym. I can buy that as a thing, yeah.
I got some vibe of there, like when Giles said, well, didn't he essentially say you're the one who let me go or fired me or something along those lines? Like, you're the reason why I'm not in the office anymore?
Yeah, I think there was kind of something like that in passing, but the thing about it is that I get that kind of sense as well. The thing is that it seems to me like you get the sense from Giles that when he's talking to the fishman and he's doing that thing of, have you always been alone? I don't know how I ended up alone. It wasn't my intent, but that you really get the sense that he recently had a better life and something happened not too long before the start of the film, and he's kind of ended up in this place.
Mm-hmm.
The phrase he uses to later on is, I was either born too early or too late to have the life I want.
Yeah, and I think a lot of outcasts feel that way. That kind of displaced in time feeling. Mm-hmm. That somewhere there was a society, or will be a society, that was accepting to me. Mm. But I just ended up being unlucky enough to be born in this one. And that, I think, is the interesting fairy tale with Eliza and the Fishman, because in all of the Beauty and the Beast fairy tales, no matter kind of what form that takes, there is always the sense of there are two lovers and they are somehow different, and they have to learn to overcome their differences, and maybe one or both of them changes either emotionally or physically, and then they can have their love.
Mhm.
And in this one, the lovers are the only things that never change in this film. They are the only characters that do not have an arc. Eliza does not have an arc in this film. The Fishman does not have an arc in this film. They meet, they fall in love, and they end the movie as the exact same characters they start the movie. Except now they are in love. They never have a fight. They never have any sort of disagreement other than, please don't eat my neighbor's cat. And that is it. I mean, as far as those two characters, they are steady and constant.
I would say there's the tiniest bit of change with the Fishman, where he has to learn that not all humans are terrible. It's a very, very tiny change, but it is there.
Well, yeah, when he first meets her, he is very worried that she will also harm him.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond that, I will grant you that. There is that moment of, will she also be an enemy? But that passes very quickly. Once he learns that, like, she is not coming at me with aggression. But that's reasonable. I'll give him that. Every human you have met in this new environment has been absolutely awful to you and hit you with a cattle prod. It's fun. But what has to change is literally everything else in this environment. You know, Zelda has to change. Giles has to change. Hofstadter has to change a bit.
Mhm.
You know, society in general. I mean, every other thing in this film has to change somewhat to accommodate these two characters. The only thing that doesn't have to change in this Beauty and the Beast story are Beauty and the Beast, which I find a fascinating idea. They are the only thing that's right in this world. Everything else is slightly off kilter, which I think is fascinating in a movie where you have a seemingly human woman who fucks a fish. Like, that's the one thing that's okay in this film. Everything else is wrong.
I think it really describes Del Toro's ultimate ethos of more than anything else. The base of all his movies on some level is loving the monster. Loving the monster is within you. Loving, like you say for Bowie Day, loving the alien, the parts of us that are strange, and that it's not wrong to have those parts and to keep those parts. They don't need to change.
Well, I mean, that is the reason why I love Del Toro movies and Del Toro himself so much, is that, you know, I talk about that there's a lot that I find similar between, you know, he and I, and that is one of those major things, is that's one of my ethos as well. You know, there's a reason why I like the villains. You know, it's like, you can you can talk about, like, well, I disagree with the actions, but I want to understand the reasonings, you know? And I am always about loving the monster, because I really dislike when you're just like, well, you know, that's our two-dimensional mustache twirling, you know, whatever. Because even in this one, you know, what did we start the conversation off with? Let's talk about what made Strickland the way he is. Even in the movie where you have maybe one of the most two-dimensional mustache twirling villains Del Toro has ever given us, he's not. He's a guy that was probably beaten down by this system. And even him, he's got an even bigger villain, which is the general that just walks in and goes, count the stars on my shoulder. That means I can do whatever the hell I want. Like, you know, I see a fish man, I can kill it. I see a country, I can bomb it. I'm the big swinging dick general. Like, well, screw you, dude. I've never met a guy I wanted to punch in the face more. I don't care if you're a 5-star general. You seem like a douche. Nobody should have that much power. Go away. Who made you god of the military? Also, why is there a military? Go away. Like, it's like, I don't care.
Him and the handler too. They both have that attitude of, yes, you think that this thing is worth more, but it's obviously worth more. But I'm not going to even entertain that idea. I'm just going to steamroll over it because I've decided it. I'm the decider.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's.
And there's nothing you want to kick in the balls more than the guy who goes, I'm the decider in there. I mean, it just like, no. It's, I mean, maybe it's just my particular neurotype, but if you wander into the room and be like, I'm the boss, do what I say, I'm going to be like, yeah, I'm not about that. That's, I'm going to do everything I can to not do that, just to spite you.
I think it's super fascinating, like you said, how even Strickland, the mustache twirling awful, like, is flawed, and he's deeply human. He's not, for all his, oh yes, this is a stereotype, there's a broken human edge to him that we see there. And I don't know how much of it is Del Toro, how much of it is Michael Shannon, but Michael Shannon excels at that type. And it's beautiful in its own way because of how broken he is. And if the creature gets, you know, the split second arc of is this human going to hurt me, and then there's that quick change. I think at the end he gets his very quick change too, when he realizes, oh, I was wrong about everything, and then dies.
Yeah, I do like that he got that moment of realizing that he was wrong. I mean, it is a brief second right before, you know, he gets his throat cut. But I absolutely, one of the things that annoys me in real life is the fact that the real villains in life just get to walk around thinking they're the heroes. You know, there's that great line of, you know, every villain thinks they're the hero of the story, which is great from a writing perspective and an acting perspective, but it's also true in real life that truly horrible people really do think that they're the good guy.
Because they have the power of the Holy One and the goodness, and, well, you're the other blah, 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 you know, we've kind of been through that, yeah.
But I do like that in that brief moment, you know, he will die realizing that he's the bad guy here.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that. That is probably the worst of it. Like, is there something beyond? I don't know. But at that moment, as he's laying there bleeding out, he will realize that, like, oh crap, I tortured a god. like that will be his final thought. Like, I was the bad guy in this story.
Just echoing his head, I've made a huge mistake, just over and over again.
Like, I deserve this. I deserve this. This is I am having the day I deserve. Like, this is I'm getting the day I deserve. Yeah. Which I guess is the closest thing to justice that you could probably hope for. But I don't know. I just a brief note on Zelda.
Yeah.
The goat. Can we just... Zelda is awesome.
Yes.
I mean, Octavia Spencer is great and everything, but Zelda is such a good character. You feel for her every moment she's on screen. She is in way over her head, and she handles it wonderfully. And I am... Don't you just hate her husband? What a useless sack of shit.
Yeah, I mean, she talks shit about her husband throughout the entire movie and how he's just lazy, he doesn't do anything, and we finally see that towards the end of the movie.
And she's right. Like, at first you're like, woman, really? Like, come on, he's got to have some good points. Nope, no redeeming quality in this man.
She's cooking, and then he's sitting there watching TV, and he tells her to get the door when he's clearly the closest to the door.
There's a part of me that does feel like he's not 100% terrible for telling Strickland about the creature. From, like, a viewer point of view, from Zelda's point of view, from everyone's, I 100% understand why he's hated for it, and I will not begrudge anyone for hating him for it, but at the same time, he is a black man. They were a black couple in the 1960s, and this guy is just barged into their house, waving a cattle prod around, putting his rotting fingers everywhere, and if he killed him, nothing would happen to him. There's literally nothing stopping this guy from just deciding, fuck it, I'm just going to beat the shit out of these people because I can. I don't blame him for saying, I need to get this man out of my house immediately, by any means necessary. Mm-hmm. Everything else, total piece of shit. I 100% agree with him. Fuck him, I hope he divorces Zelda, but I do understand that one point of view.
Oh yeah, no, I am totally with you on that. That is the only point in the movie where I'm like, I 100% understand what he did in that moment. Because you absolutely understand the motivation of, I am a black man and this crazy ass white man who I know that my wife works at a top secret government facility that I am not allowed to know anything about. And I know that I have overheard her talking on the phone about some crazy ass illegal shit she just got up to that may or may not be considered treason. Mm-hmm. And it is the middle of the night and a crazy ass white man just stomped his ass in here with a cattle prod, ripped off 2 of his fingers, and threatened to rip my house down to the ground, burying me and my wife in there. I mean, I 1000% understand him being like, yeah, the fish man's over at the mute girl's place. I am not faulting him for that. Not at all. Everything else we hear about him in the movie, he is a complete waste of space. Please divorce him, girl. You have a job. Hopefully you can get an apartment with some friends or something. I realize that it is hard for a black woman in the 60s to survive on her own. There might be kids in the picture. I get it, but please try to, find something. Move in with your sister or whatever. Hopefully you get to keep that government job.
Yeah. I loved her. I was very worried that she was going to be the black best friend and just do nothing but say, "Are you all right?" in various tones of voices. And she was not, at least to the best of my knowledge. She was a fully realized character who, like you said, had an arc, who had motivations beyond Eliza, and who Octavia Spencer played absolutely beautifully. She's amazing. She's one of my favorite actresses.
I think before we wrap up, we just gotta have a very short Doug Jones love fest, because we have talked about Doug Jones on the show before, but can we talk about Doug Jones getting to be the romantic lead in a movie?
Yes.
He just loves playing fish people, doesn't he?
I mean, I think Guillermo del Toro loves having Doug Jones play fish people.
Yes. Well,
This-
Abe Sapien walks so that the asset could fuck, and
Yeah,
amen.
yeah. I mean, Abe Sapien did get a bit of a crush in that second movie,
I don't
but
think he's responsible.
but he didn't fuck in that second movie. I mean,
Yes.
we didn't really have. I mean, they could have gone a lot farther with it, but that would have been a real feat of, prosthetics, I guess.
Them describing how they had sex is actually more interesting than if they had shown it.
That
Yes.
that was a very interesting way to handle that. Yeah. I love. This was, I think they said. I think they said that this movie was the 8th movie that he had done with Del Toro. By the time they did it. But yeah, the first one he did was Mimic. And he only got Mimic by kind of accident, because they had another tall, skinny, suit-wearing actor, and that actor, like, he got sick or something on a day they needed to do a couple of big shots, and somebody was like, "Hey, I think Doug Jones is nearby," and they called him up and they were like, "Literally, what are you doing tonight in like 3 hours?" And he was like, "Nothing, if you've got a paycheck for me." And so they were like, "Yeah, we got a paycheck. Come down to this, spot." And so he did that, and then they were like, "Yeah, the other guy's still sick, so can you come back tomorrow?" And he did, and apparently I think he said that they were like at lunch or something, and he was just still sitting around in the Mimic suit, and Del Toro just came up and sat next to him and started talking to him at lunch, and he was like, "So, do you do a lot of like wearing suits in creature films?" And he was like, "Yeah, actually," because he had done a lot of them by that point. And Del Toro was like, "Oh, who have you worked with?" And by that point, Doug Jones had a pretty good career. And so he had worked with a lot of the big makeup people, and he started naming them, and Del Toro was like, "Oh man, I love them." And because Del Toro is just a fanboy. And he was just really impressed by everybody Doug Jones had worked with, and he was like, "Do you have a business card?" And Doug Jones was like, "Yeah, I have a business card." He's like, "Give me your business card." And so he did, and like 5 years later, they made a maquette for Abe Sapien when they were doing Hellboy, and somebody in the room went, because like everybody in the room had worked with Doug Jones at that point, and somebody in the room went, this sculpt really looks like Doug Jones, and everybody went, yeah, it does look like Doug Jones. And Del Toro went, Doug Jones, why do I know that name? And pulled out his wallet and pulled out Doug Jones' business card that he had been carrying around in his wallet for 5 years, and went, that's why I know that guy. And they called him up and was like, do you want to be an boy?
That's awesome.
So yeah, after that was just, he was the go-to guy for that. But now, like, whenever Del Toro needs a guy, it's Doug Jones. But yeah, I've loved Doug Jones like since the Mac Tonight days. Don't come at me with your Doug Jones, man. But the yeah, this one they wanted him to be, they specifically, Del Toro wanted them to sculpt the fishman to be fuckable. Like, he walked in the room and he was like, I want you to make me a fishman, but I want it to be the creature from the Black Lagoon, but fuckable.
One of the things I read about this that I, again, love Del Toro for is he said he specifically wanted this movie to be the woman gets to fuck and live. And
he said the exact same thing about Crimson Peak. He's like, you want to, he's like, I want it to be a gothic horror, but I want the heroine to fuck and survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, bless that man for that. Like,
yes,
I'm so sick of woman falls in love and dies. MCU.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I love that, and I love the fact that he wanted, in the performance, what Doug Jones was told, I mean, speaking of Marvel, was he brought Doug Jones in, and Doug Jones was like, well, how do you want this thing to move and react, and are we going totally animal, are we going totally human, like, what do you want? And he was like, it should be a little bit animal, but mostly I want it to be Silver Surfer if he was a matador.
Fascinating.
And so it's kind of a superhero powerful stance, but if you've ever watched matadors move in a bull ring, they have a very particular way of holding their arms and moving their hips, and if you watch the way the creature move in the movie, Doug Jones holds his arms in that same kind of pose in his very powerful godlike moments. And he moves his hips in that same kind of stance. It's a very grounded center of gravity that all moves around the hips. And so it's a very kind of, I almost want to say kind of like a salsa dance kind of move, where it's very focused on the movement of the hips, which also kind of makes it very fuckable, because it's a very sexy kind of movement, because it's all very kind of weirdly pelvic, you know? And so it's very fascinating in the way that he kind of holds his arms back like a matador. And you can almost imagine when you look at it, if you go back and look at it, you can almost imagine him like holding a cape in one hand or whatever, and circling a bull, in that same kind of pose. But it's fascinating, and he says he uses Doug Jones over and over again because Doug Jones is actually an actor. He's not just like a stunt guy that can put on a suit. He knows emotion, and he, which, I mean, if you've seen his work on like Discovery or something now, it's a lot more clear to people who just know him as that guy in the suit or whatever. But he says that's why he likes using Doug Jones, is because he wants somebody who knows how to act through all those layers of makeup.
And that's very hard to do.
Yeah, there's really not a lot of people who can do it. It's such a more particular skill, because a lot of actors, you put prosthetics on them and they lose that ability.
Because most of their acting is through facial expression. You also have to have the body language as well. And Doug Jones is really good at body language.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why he uses Ron Perlman as well, because Ron Perlman used to be just, the A game of that as well, because, Beauty and the Beast back in the day. And he's still got skills because Hellboy and stuff, but he knows how to do it as well. It's one of the reasons why I love Jeffrey Combs, because he's one of the greatest at it. But a lot of actors, you put them in that much prosthetic and they just kind of forget all their training. It's why so many studios, I think, are going to that mocap stuff, is you kind of put dots on their faces and go like, well, we'll just CGI stuff onto your face later. So maybe you'll stop forgetting how to act when we put an appliance on you. So I have nothing but the utmost respect for people who kind of continue to be able to act through those layers, because it is a very specific skill, and it's not something everybody can do. And I've always loved and gravitated towards actors who can do it, which is why I take particular note of the people who can, and it's why Doug Jones caught my eye so early. Honestly, that, and I just watch an obscene amount of horror films and creature features that have people like Doug Jones in them.
It's almost a horror movie thing, I've noticed more, like actors who are able to bring that kind of theatricality to the big screen or the small screen, where you get up really close and not have it look weird. It's something Jeffrey Combs does. It's something that Vincent Price could do. It's something that Ron Perlman did, and Doug Jones can. It's remembering a type of theatrical acting that I don't think you really see much in mainstream actors anymore. Like, you still get some. You get like the ones who come from the British theater tradition, like Ian McKellen and David Tennant and those types. They have that physicality, and they're able to emote big while not being over the top. But it's something that's, I think, required more in a horror movie, and something that I think Del Toro especially looks for, because all of his movies, if nothing else, are horror adjacent.
Yeah, and I mean, Doug has a background in mime and, contortion and stuff like that. But the thing is that I just don't think a lot of actors today, I mean, maybe some of the ones who go through the some of the major schools over in the UK. But not a lot of American actors, I find, really have kind of the intense body work.
Mm-hmm.
And they do tend to do more kind of subtle stuff with face and voice, which is an outgrowth of how good technology has gotten with cameras and microphones and everything. But it does hurt you when you're back on a stage or when you have to do something underneath prosthetics. And it also does hurt you if you need something that requires a little less vocalization and a little more physicality. And I think it's why we're seeing things like, you know, some of the weirdo toxic method stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where it's like, oh, I don't know how to get into this character. Let me send rodents to my co-stars or whatever. Is because you're forgetting some of the more kind of basic tricks that actors used to rely on, and now you're just like, let me be a douchebag for a while and see if that'll help, which it doesn't. Stop doing that. But I think that that's why I love people who remember those kind of more traditional theatrical methods. Because we get amazing performances like that. But of course, the problem is then you get people like Doug Jones, who is the star of the Oscar winner for Best Picture, and he walks down the red carpet and people are like, yay, it's the entire cast and the weird skinny dude who we won't talk to on the red carpet, which, you know, is like, I hated watching the Oscars that year because I was like, yay, Doug Jones is there, and the camera won't show him because nobody knows who he is. You know?
This is why award shows put a big emphasis on showing an actor's face. We had talked about this before with, like, you know, The Mandalorian and stuff like that, where, you know, actors will not get the recognition because their faces were never shown.
Yeah, you have no feelings on The Mandalorian, do you, Tasha?
They're much more positive than you would think. But I was thinking about Anthony Serkis, and when Gollum was in The Two Towers, and people were like, why is he not getting Oscar buzz? This is amazing. Oh, wait, because it's all mocap. And does this count as an animated performance? It technically doesn't. He did all that. It was all his physicality. They mapped it over and overlaid it, but it doesn't count. And kind of the same thing with Doug Jones. It's obviously all his performance. This would not be anybody else. No one else could have done this. And it's kind of about, you know, the Oscars is about who can do the saddest, crumply, cryy face up close and show their nice physique the most, and not about, you know, this kind of acting. If it were about real acting, Doug Jones would be nominated all the time. Anthony Serkis would be nominated all the time, because what they're doing is just incredible real acting in a way that a lot of other actors never can and never will. And it's like you said, they look like the weird skinny guy out on the red carpet, and they're lucky if they get in the cast photo.
Yeah, my good friend Sydney, who has been on the show before, she and I are the, like, co-chairs of the, oh my god, give Andy Serkis a freaking Oscar already club. We have been beating that drum for years now. So I'm totally with you on that. And I also would like to join the give Doug Jones a freaking Oscar already, you numpties for that. Yeah. So it's, yeah, I mean, I've talked before on the show about how I very much dislike awards shows being the let's stand in a field and cry form of acting, because I'm not sure that that's really particularly the best use of that. I don't really think that's where we stretch somebody's real talent. But it is what they seem to go for. But yeah, I was very shocked that this won the Oscar that year. I mean, it ended up getting 13 nominations that year, and it ended up winning 4, including Best Director and Best Picture.
It's one of the very few genre pieces that I've ever won. I know that Lord of the Rings was really the first fantasy movie.
This was only the second fantasy film to win. Return of the King was the first.
We haven't had a technical horror movie, like a straight up supernatural horror movie, ever really win. We've had Silence of the Lambs, which I'd call a horror movie, but people can effectively make the case that it's a thriller, which I think is kind of a cop out, but you can make that case. So, and I don't think we've ever really had a sci-fi movie win, have we?
The thing is, though, is that it is very much a thing of how studios campaign and what the voters feel like on the particular year. We've talked before about the things that survive and become beloved versus the things that win the awards not always being the same. Sometimes they are. I mean, Lord of the Rings continues to be beloved for good reason, I feel. I think that this film keeps picking up fans. I think it was one that a lot of people slept on, but people will, kind of continue to find and love. But I do think that it's one of those that it's a movie for the people who need to find the movie, if that makes sense. It will speak to the movie it needs to speak to.
I think it's one of those ones that's going to be definitely rediscovered down the lines, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh, why did nobody tell me about this? Like Crimson Peak is getting that moment now, I've noticed. And Crimson Peak, incidentally, is probably my second favorite of his. They're only slightly behind Pan's Labyrinth. They're like neck and neck, depending on my feels. But I can see this one becoming like Crimson Peak, where they're like, how was this not noticed? Where's this movie been all my life? And I think that that's kind of a better legacy than winning the Oscar for it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad he got the Oscar because, you know, I mean, go get your statue, you wonderful little man. But the that's
more money now to make more stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you know, those things kind of give you clout with the money people, and fine. It's I don't particularly. It's not going to give you much clout with me. You know, it's like I liked him before. I'm gonna continue to like him, but money people, please give him money to make films. I guess. But it's just such a beautiful movie. If there's one thing you can say about Del Toro, it's that he knows how to make a pretty picture. And I mean that in the sense of, like, you could pause any frame of this and put it on my wall. This is a gorgeous film in the sense of just artwork.
And it's not a style over substance movie either. I mean, I'm of the opinion most of that style is substance. You can put a pretty movie on there and give it the shallowest story and I'll still be drooling for more, but everything does have purpose here. Everything has a layer. And he's one of the directors that does that sort of thing incredibly well. And I hope he just keeps doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I say the same thing about Crimson Peak, too. That's just a beautiful film in the sense of, you know, pause any frame of that, and it's just an absolute artwork. But this movie, just the way the colors are used, and the way it's framed, and set design, and the costuming, and you know, everything is so beautifully thought out, and it works so perfectly on the screen. It looks so good, and it serves the story so well. You know immediately who all the characters are just visually. But it's such a beautiful film in all senses of the word. And the sound too, the music that they've chosen, all the old Hollywood songs, and then the score, and the sound design, and the way that the sounds from the fishman, the little gurgles and the chattering, you know, the chirping sounds he makes and stuff. So yeah, everything is just, it works so well together. I love it. So do we want to get to the question?
Yeah. So this brings us to the question: does The Shape of Water have the magic? Tash, since you're our guest, go first.
Heck yeah, it has the magic. And maybe not quite a Disney magic, but it is definitely magical movie.
It's got the fish god magic.
It has the fish god magic.
Kiki?
Yeah, this is very high up on my list, on the Del Toro list of films. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, again, I don't know about the Disney magic, but it's got the bioluminescent fish god magic, definitely.
I'm going to agree. I feel bad that I slept on this movie. Again, I had my reasons, but watching it takes a bit to get going, but once it gets going, it's very sweet. The romance between our two leads, and yeah, it's I would recommend it to anyone who will like it. It's a nice reinterpretation or reimagining of the creature from the Black Lagoon in a way that I don't think anyone except Del Toro would have thought of. So, Tash, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Not really. I've got my Facebook that I really take care of the most. It's Natasha Cox on Facebook. If you see what looks like someone in a Mandalorian costume, probably me. And that's about it for now. Thank you guys very, very much for having me. This was a blast.
All right, and you're welcome back on the show anytime.
I will say that Tasha has possibly the coolest Mandalorian cosplay that I have ever seen. Her Mandalorian character is one of the coolest ever. Beautiful stuff.
Thank you so much. That really means fun.
Tasha, as a first-time guest, you are allowed a request, and we will watch whatever it is you request in the next episode. Tasha, do you have a request for us?
I request DuckTales 2017, the reboot. If you want a good overview of it, I would say the first couple of episodes, the pilot, Woohoo, and the next episode are probably the best intros to the show. And if you feel like kicking a few more on there, I really recommend Death Knight Returns and Let's Get Dangerous. 3 of those are available on YouTube for free. If you don't have Disney Plus viewers or listeners, just saying. But I think that y'all will like that a lot.
All right, so come back next week as we were diving into DuckTales 2017. And we will talk to you all next time. Bye.
Bye. If you want to help the fight for human rights in the U.S., the American Civil Liberties Union works to protect constitutional rights for all Americans. Their website is aclu.org. If you need reproductive services in the U.S. or wish to donate to those who do, go to abortionfunds.org for more info. The battle isn't over until the last person surrenders. The fight continues. Don't let the magic stop here.
Join our conversation online on Facebook at Rewatching the Magic,
Twitter at Rewatch the Magic,
and of course, new episodes every week at rewatchingthemagic.podbean.com.
Remember, the magic is for everyone.
It only stops if you let it.